But right now, what I want you to do is I want you to be thinking about questions for this group, because interaction is part of what we're looking for here. We've got microphones here that you're going to get to share. I'll give you mine right here, and I'm going to turn it over to Bruce and Jason. Please give our panelists a big round of applause.
Well, thank you very much, Donald, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here and for Bruce and I to have the opportunity to moderate this session. Thank you very much for that opportunity, Andy. Really excited about the panel we have and hope to hear a lot of good things from these ranchers and things that they're putting to use on their operation. So that's maybe where we're going to start. And I'll start with you on the far end, Justin. If you just go ahead and introduce yourselves again really quickly and take a few minutes to tell the audience something that's unique about your ranch, your enterprise, your operation, something that you've maybe put in place, something that you're doing that's fairly unique, that's really working well for you. And then we'll get down the line. We'll have Dr. Steffens tell us a little bit about his educational program, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for some questions initially.
Okay, can y'all hear me all right? My name is Justin Rader. My wife, Brenda, and I have what we call 100th Meridian Ranching. If you didn't know it, we're really close to the 100th Meridian here. It separates us from Oklahoma, thankfully. But we ranch on either side of that, and so that's why we call ourselves that. But we're thankful to have Texas Panhandle roots, but so our kind of thought is honor our heritage, but build a future too. So one thing that kind of makes us different is we've been eat, sleeping, and breathing fenced in water so it can graze better for the past 5 years. So at our own detriment and learning experience, we've had some ups and downs through that. So that's just kind of something we've been working on that might make us a little different.
Can y'all hear me? John Haley, grew up here in Canadian, and kind of very similar to Justin and Adam. We all have, kind of that, trying to learn more about water and grazing management. They are, as far as the grazing go, they're way ahead of me in our family, but we just finished up putting in a water system, a little over 15 miles of poly, storage tanks, gravity system, and really kind of getting that kicked off. And that's kind of been the most unique thing for us most recently about what we're trying to do. And, just the management tool that it brings and flexibility, that's been really nice. And there's a lot to learn, and we're working the kinks out, but that's kind of what we're working on here currently.
Test. All right, I've always been a little bit different and done things differently, so I'm gonna stand up. Aubrey, stand up. This is my wife, Aubrey. She keeps the ship sailing. We're both 50-50 business partners in our venture called Need More Ranching, doing things a little bit differently, trying to learn a lot. Maybe to give you all an idea of some questions or some stuff, we're trying to use a lot of technologies that other people maybe haven't dove into yet to make our job easier. One of those is drones. I'm using them quite frequently, several times a week, just to check water, look at animals, save wear and tear on vehicles, save gas, save time. Doing some kind of neat things with that, reading ear tags if you need to, if you're, those types of things. We've got a bunch of other little technologies in fencing, automatic gate lifters, and water systems that text us if we've got problems, leaks, how many gallons we're using a day, when pumps kick on and off, all that kind of stuff. So just trying different things. Hopefully maybe that sparked something that somebody could quiz us and ask us about. We're still trying to learn a lot and have a long ways to go, but just trying to do things a little bit smarter, and I'm lazy. I don't like working too hard, so that's probably really the reason why I do a lot of that stuff. So thank y'all.
So I'm Tim Steffens. I am an extension specialist for the Panhandle, and then have a associate professor position with WT. I've bounced around all over the country. I don't have an operation of my own other than a few sheep, but I ran a ranch for the Mescaleros for a little while, and I've looked at a lot of country and seen some things that work for a lot of people, and I tell people if I ever had an original thought, it would perish from loneliness. But I have had a few independent thoughts, and I've seen some things that work for other people, and so my extension program, a big part of that is, I call it a grazing management school, but it's more of a ranch management school. We cover economics, nutrition, reproduction, ecology, plant physiology, and then we talk about grazing management. And the things these guys are doing are a lot of the stuff that we talk about. And unlike a lot of extension programs you've probably been a part of, we don't come in and say, here's a widget and here's how you use it. We say, here's how you decide which widgets would be best to use and how they might help in your particular situation. And so I guess that's all I got.
Well, thank you all very much for those introductions. What we're going to do now, before I mention that, Andy is going to be passing around a sign-up sheet. So any of you that may be interested in participating in, or maybe even just interested in more information on that grazing management school that Dr. Steffens mentioned, you're going to have the opportunity to go ahead and put your name and contact information on that list. So that's going to start making its way around the room. Now, Bruce and I have a few questions that we've prepared to ask our panelists, but before we do that, before I hand it over to Bruce to ask the first question, we wanted to go ahead and open it up to the audience. So we want to give all of you the opportunity, since we are on a little bit of a limited timeline, to ask questions that you have for each of these panelists. So if you wouldn't mind, if you do have a question, whether it's something that was sparked by something they're doing on their ranch that you're interested in more information on, or maybe something else, don't hesitate. Go ahead and raise your hand. Bruce and I are gonna take our microphones, and we're gonna, I guess, get stretched out a little bit for this afternoon's demos, and bring the microphones around to you all so that everyone can hear your question. And that's all. We have one right here, so we'll go ahead and start here.
For each of you, what type of herd management software do you use, and why did you choose it?
I use Pasture Map. I don't know that it's necessarily any better than Maya Grazing. Those are two good options. But it automatically calculates, my cow days per acre, and anything that I might need. I can put in rainfall and all that kind of stuff just to get an idea of how much forage I've got in front of me and how much longer I can utilize it. So I think those are both free applications for at least a limited, trial, and you can kind of see how that works, how you like it. They're not flawless. There's still some bugs and some software issues that they're working through, but man, it saves a whole lot more time than doing grazing charts on paper. So.
Yeah, I use My Grazing. Both of those are great options for our family. There's really four of us involved: my dad, my uncle, and my cousin Bill, and so we can all get on there, look at things, move things around. They both have a lot of the similar qualities that Pasture Map does. Their customer service has been good. They are based out of Australia, but they've been very good. But there are bugs. We've had issues trying to work those out, and they're willing to work with you. And they have a stateside team that will work through those and really implement and kind of walk you through some of those things. So it's been nice. It's like Adam says, it saves a lot of time, and you can kind of at a glance take a look where we at, what's our forage availability, put in rainfall, and run a lot of different scenarios. I think earlier one of the presentations talking about projecting things. They have a lot of those neat features with rainfall and stocking rates that you can project, and it'll give you forage capacity, and it's a neat tool.
I've just used a regular old, extremely basic paper chart, grazing chart. So it looks complicated on the wall, but none of them is harder than fourth grade math. And I wanted to do that just for the discipline of knowing what numbers go into what to give me an output that I can use. So, stock days per acre per inch of rain is one thing we can keep track of, So I wanted to have something on my wall that was always there, that was extremely cheap, but I could just always count on it. And so just to practice that discipline of doing it and keeping up with it has told me a story that even though you were there doing it, you wouldn't remember, 2 weeks ago what the exact conditions were on that pasture and how many head you had. So that's just critical to keep track of it, however you are. The method doesn't matter.
And I guess part of this school, I taught this stuff to a bunch of college students for a while, and we were doing what Justin was. And they bucked the bridle off and said, look, you get us a spreadsheet or we're done. And so I put one together where you can do planning and do monitoring on the same kind of a program. But you don't have all the gizmos. You can't put it on your phone like Maya. You can't push a little button. You still have to enter a few numbers, but it's very few numbers once you get started. And it kind of will go ongoing. So there's a lot of variation in what you can do.
So Kim, we're sending these lists down the tables for the grass grazing school. We're sending these lists down the tables for people to sign up if they're interested in the grass grazing school that you founded right here in this county with me about 5 or 6 years ago.
Actually a little longer than that.
I
think
lose
we've
track.
done 6.
Yeah.
But
So would you tell the crowd a little bit about this? And the sign-up sheet is just if you're interested. It doesn't commit you, but it allows us to know who's interested so we can get information out about your school.
okay.
And while Dr. Steffens is answering that and providing you with information, if anybody else has a next question, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll go ahead and make our way towards you.
Okay. So it's $400 a person. We meet one afternoon a month, or the way we have been doing it is one afternoon a month for más o menos 11 to 12 months. It kind of depends on how the discussion goes. We try to take a systems approach to it. Like I say, we start with economics and we work through all of those deals. And we're trying to build on that now. Thank you, Andy, for reminding me. I almost forgot. We are, for alumni of the school, if you're interested, Pancho Abello and Justin and I are putting together some peer groups to kind of take this to the next level where producers help each other to implement some of the stuff that we talk about. I'm very proud. Well, I may be kidding myself, but Justin has gone through it. John's uncle went through it. Adam is going through it now. They may all be doing this all in spite of me. But they're doing some things that we talk about, and I think it's been fairly successful, and I hope I'm not talking out of school, but I think John's uncle was somewhat of a skeptic when he started, and now he's kind of implementing some of it. So I hope there is some interest in doing this. I'll kind of go wherever there's a crowd. So if some of you are from Oklahoma or Kansas and you're saying you don't want to travel this far, well, maybe I'll go to you if you can draw a crowd. So, and it's $400 a person. If you come to every session and you get done and you say, I don't think I got $400 worth out of this, I'll give you your money back. If you'll bring somebody from your operation with you, it's half price for them. If you want to repeat it, it's half price afterwards.
So Louise Smith took it 3 times.
Joe's taken it, 3? Justin's taken it for the second time. So I like to think at least some people like it. So
Adam, you said you use drones on your ranch. Did you have to get registered through the FAA to have to use them? No.
No, I haven't. I've not done it for any commercial use or for hire. Nobody pays me to do anything. It's all for my own personal use. So, no, I've not. If there's certain areas that I wanted to go fly, generally populated areas, I would need to have a license. But where my cows are, there's not people. Those mics.
What's the range on your drones? How far can you send them out and look at a water tank, see if you still got water or not?
Yeah, so on the range, you're kind of limited to two potentially different things, either topography or battery life. And if there's a lot of topography, if you're in a low spot trying to fly and you're going to have a bunch of hills between you and it, you're going to lose reception if you try to descend down. And then battery life, and that's dependent upon the wind. If you got a windy day, it's going to use a lot of battery power. But in a non-windy day, my little drone, about 4 mile stretch, I can fly 4 miles and come back and not really do much once I get 4 miles away, and I'm on fumes when I get back. So you're limited with battery life. I also kind of amp mine up and put it on it's called sport mode to fly faster. I don't have a lot of patience. I could go further if I just wanted it on normal, but I don't have the patience for that, so.
All right, so really quick, if there are any other questions from the audience throughout the rest of the panel discussion. Yes, sir, we got one right there. Perfect. Will, where were you?
Just real quick, John, you were talking about your 15 miles of poly watering system. Are you talking about solar, power, electric, and is that helping you utilize your pastures?
Yes. So we have we're going to break it into 2 wells, but ended up consolidating it to one. It's a pretty good sized well. It's 10-inch cased, and it'd give me 100 gallons a minute if I needed it. But we set it for the pump to do 30 gallons a minute. It's got power, and it is pushing roughly 3.5 miles to the storage tank. So, and we roughly at the well, we have, if the storage tanks are getting pretty full, we have about 185 to 190 PSI there. It pushes there, and then there's 4 lines leaving those gravity tanks, and then we also put in 14 24-foot fiberglass in our pastures. Basically, roughly we had, a watering for 700 acres, and after the fact, just on the affected acres, we roughly have one to every 340 acres. I would say pick your topography. Everyone knows their ranch or their property. Find somewhere that you don't have distribution, or man, I'd really like to put in a fence over here, but man, I don't have water. So that's kind of how we took that approach and distributed that out. And so it's given us, we really haven't done any more cross fencing except for on some riparian areas, but that's probably to come. And we were shooting for no less than 17 gallons a minute recharge at our floats in our tanks. And I think we achieved that. So it's really nice. Like Adam said, we use the same system pivot track out of Dalhart. They put a sensor at the storage tanks, and then there's a sensor remote at the well, so I can pull my phone out and turn the pump on right now, or I can have a level. I have it set in there at an automatic, so if it gets to 32% in the tanks, it'll automatically kick the pump on, and it will kick off at 88% and shut it down. And so you'll be asleep and it'll turn off or it'll turn on. It's really nice. And what Adam said about realizing if you have leaks or anything, it has a chart there that charts 7-day average. So you're watching there, and it's pretty consistent. And Adam and I both have seen, well, man, that's a lot of water, and man, cows are using water at 2 a.m. I don't think so. So we have found some leaks fairly quickly because of that, and really it was just fittings and valves because we were putting it in the middle of the winter. So I think we had some winter stress there, and I think we're getting past most of those.
So John, what's your anticipation with this new watering system, the effect it's going to have on your stocking rate?
Well, I'm not jumping out there and saying, well, I think I can run this much more. I'm hoping for maybe 25%, 35%. That's my calculation on maybe my return on my investment there and when I can get that paid out. But for right now, I've put in some temporary fence and been able to hold some heifers on this side, and I've typically, we get 20, most average stocking rates 20 animal days per acre, and I recently got 35. Now that's pushing it kind of hard, but it's given us that option. So I don't really know what that effects is going to be, but long term, I think it just gives management tools. I mean, getting ready to ship or branding, you can, throw 250 cows together and not worry about it. Is a pretty good, nice peace of mind.
Can I expound a little on the animal days per acre for anyone that might have interest? How many of you don't? Yeah. How many of you do not know what an animal day per acre is? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Anybody not know what that is? Perfect. John's mother. Okay. An animal day per acre. Sorry for pointing you out there. An animal day per acre is how much feed an animal eats in one day. And so we can calculate how much grass our herd is eating in one day. So I know if I don't have any fires and I don't have any grass grow for this year, I will run out of grass somewhere around November 15th, plus or minus probably 5 days. That's how accurate you can get with this stuff. There's extreme value in that. There's extreme value in knowing how much money somebody's going to pay me in one day. So typically, conventionally, he was getting 20 animal days per acre. Let's just say you're getting paid $1 per animal day per acre. Or per animal day. If you were taking in somebody's cattle, that's a good rough number. If he can increase that to now 15, he's netting an extra $15 an acre. That's big stuff. $15 an acre is big stuff. And for the little amount of money, I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but really you can pay for these water systems fairly quickly if you can nearly double your grazing on that. So yeah. Sorry.
Yes, I had a question. Any one of y'all could probably answer this, but John mentioned that he's shooting for a minimum of 17 gallons per minute on his farthest watering point. Like, how do you figure how many gallons per minute you need per head or anything like that?
Great question. Honestly, I went and toured a ranch that had that, and they were doing what hopefully I could do eventually. They were running 600 pairs in one herd, and that's what they were getting by with a 16-foot tank and 17 gallons a minute. So I kind of knew there was my baseline. I knew that was adequate, but I knew at times if I ever got in a tight spot, I wanted to have a little more capacity, and so I upsized my pump, and it wasn't much. I had the water to do it, so that was my baseline, essentially.
And there's a balancing act, too, where if you don't have as much flow, a solution to that is a smaller tank, so you don't have as many cattle drinking at once. If you've got these huge tanks where 100 head can drink, you've got to have hundreds of gallons a minute. And if you don't, they're going to start climbing in tanks and tearing stuff up. So, I mean, I've got little mobile tanks that are on trailers that, one of them's 1,000 gallons, one of them's 750 gallons, about 10, 12 head can drink at a time. And I've got 75 gallons a minute flowing into them. It's never an issue. 1,000 cows can water off that, no problem.
And that you've got to think, there's two different ways you can do it. You can have a big trough and little pipe, or you can have a little trough and big pipe. And my personal preference is go with the little trough and big pipe, because if you run out of water and you've got a big trough and a little bitty pipe, you're going to have cows standing around that trough for a long time, gazing longingly at the bottom of it, waiting for it to get high enough that they can drink. If you've got a lot of volume coming in, You can get by with a little bitty tank because they're going to come in, get a drink, and they go. And so you've got to consider that. The other thing is the size of your pasture is going to have a lot to do with that. If you've got them at fairly high densities in a little pasture where everybody can see everybody else, they change the way they water. Where if they're in a big pasture and at fairly low densities, everybody sometime between mid-morning and noonish, they all come in and want to get a drink. And if you don't have enough capacity for them to all get a drink, they stand around and stomp out the water trough. If you have that small area and more animals, they just kind of trickle in a few at a time all day long, and everybody gets a drink, and they go back to grazing. So there's not really, I don't think, one right answer. You base it on how much will they drink, how fast do you want them to drink it, and are you going with lots of volume in the trough or lots of volume in the pipe?
We got about 10 minutes. So we had some more drought-related questions, which if we've got time, we'll come back to them. But we're going to talk about bulls this afternoon a little bit, and so we wanted to segue into that. So I know shifting our concern for the current dry, hot, soon-to-be hot conditions back to the spring of 2021 when it was cold as could be, I know there was quite a bit of concern about damage to bull testicles, and some of these bulls might not have been passing BSEs, or maybe they were deferred. I know some people didn't have any trouble at all. Maybe some did. Would y'all care to talk about that a little bit, if you did or if you didn't, or if you did BSEs, what did you see?
Yeah, so the shameless plug for myself is I lease out bulls. So we handle our bulls and test them a couple times a year. So that cold snap was concerning for sure. When you got all your eggs in one basket, it's like, well, what if I don't have any good bulls to take my customers? So we tested early. Looking back over the last few years, and this is probably over 300 or 400 tests, like about 0.5% of our bulls fail a BSE. So yeah, I think your odds of getting burned in a fire are probably better than that. So yeah, a test is good. There's no other way to tell. But it wasn't a catastrophic failure on those bulls last year due to the cold, in our experience.
And there's fire too to consider.
Yeah, so we had a little more of that effect, and it was on a in a smaller pasture. You think, well, have a big bull battery. Okay, we'll test half of them, and then mix those bulls in. And we did have one pasture that bull that tested. He tested good at the beginning, passes BSE. We put him in with a couple other bulls. One breaks a leg, one gets whipped off, and we've still got the one good bull. Him passing it at the beginning isn't always say that he's going to be good all the way through. So we had an issue there, a few more open cows in that pasture than we would have liked. So, maybe having a few spares, or calling Justin, having leasing another bull might be an option. With prices the way they are, a few open cows, that can get pretty expensive. So probably, in hindsight, we would have, pitched in another bull, or, tested those bulls. So sometimes you test them, oh, he looked fine, but at the end of the season, he wasn't any good again.
All right, we still got about 5 minutes.
So I've got a question that I'll ask if there's not any more from the audience. Now's your opportunity to ask this great panel of ranchers
Got one over here.
anything that's burning in your mind.
What kind of distance do you find is the best to have maximum distance from your water points to get pretty good distribution out in native grass pastures?
We've shot for no more than 3/4 of a mile, and most of them are under half. but that depends on your density too. You know, time of year, are we grazing stalkers versus mamas with little babies? I feel like that target of no more than half, 3/4 of a mile was a happy place for us. So we weren't dropping too much money on water, but still getting those cows out there and getting adequate utilization on the far edges of things. It could always be perfect, but every ranch I've seen has got a limitation on time, money, cows, grass, you name it. So that sweet spot is kind of what we found there.
Yeah, Justin was probably a little more calculated than I was as far as, distance. Joe, we kind of went for where do I want my cows to go, and then obviously if I got in there and I thought, well, I'd really like it here, but man, I could, if I move it another 1/4 mile, I'll be in the fence line, and then I could really get some more distribution, bang for my buck on that tank. And that's kind of why we went with the 24s, kind of to Tim's point, is so I can, I'm watering 2 pastures with one, and we really like that. So I don't know if we picked a specific distance. It was more, where do we want the cows to go, and can maybe, if I move it a little bit further or a little bit closer, I can put it and get maybe eat as much as I split it into 3 pastures. It, didn't do any more cross fencing, just went to a corner and put it in there, and it's worked out well.
What, had that other question there a moment ago. Anyway, what kind of fencing do y'all find that's easiest and most useful and most economical in the long run?
COVID has changed prices of things, so this may be a little outdated, but electric is just so much cheaper. Permanent electric, I could hire somebody 2 years ago, and it was about $875 a mile to do 2-strand electric. Temporary fencing is reels and polywire and that kind of stuff is nice. Sometimes you can get a little bit burnt out on that, but it pays. Actually, it was this time last year, Justin and I was just kind of figuring what it cost me to be here at this beef conference because I wasn't out moving my cows. And if I would have been out moving my cows, it would have been paid me $180 an hour to just move temporary electric fence. So if you're having trouble finding a good employee and you're only wanting to pay him $15 an hour, you can afford to probably offer somebody $25 an hour to just reel polywires, and they probably would do it, and you're still going to be. And that's $180 was net profit. That was after paying for my $15 an hour for labor, hourly rate for my UTV, and depreciation on all my equipment. Pays pretty good. Andy's making jokes up here.
Now then, you mentioned double wire 12.5 gauge stainless steel. I've found that a single wire works for me real well with 1 inch or bigger fiberglass post. It will survive fires in real good condition, I guarantee you. I found that out last November.
Fencing, one of the best quotes I use a lot came from a friend of mine. He did a lot of temporary fencing. And he said, the secret to a good fence is what's inside it. And by that he meant if they got enough to eat and they're broke to the fence, it doesn't take a whole lot to keep them in. If they don't have enough to eat or they're not broke, yeah, a brick wall 6 feet high, they'll get over if they need to. So I've got a good friend who is running sheep behind electric wire. I've always used on mine 3 wires. And I live right by Interstate 40. I'm going to keep on doing that. But on his interior fences, he's running 2 wires and keeping baby lambs in. What's inside it makes a lot of difference.
I kind of want to expound on that a little bit. Build for what you dream for potentially 100 years from now, maybe what your kids might do. So if it's a water system, go above and beyond. Go as big as you can afford. If it's fencing and it's like, hey, maybe we're going to get into sheep or goats, and one strand will work for cows, and I've got a lot of one strand, but if you can add maybe a couple other extra strands while you're building it and then potentially do sheep because you're already set up for it, just think for the future.
Okay. Several years back, thank you, panel, for your discussion, and I've enjoyed it. Several years back, I wound up, had one bull in each pasture, with about 25 cows. We wound up one pasture with a lot of open cows, and I couldn't figure out why my adjoining pasture, the bull kept jumping the fence. I couldn't figure out why, because I had open cows in that pasture. Since then, it's a little more expensive, but it was expensive having open cows. It's a little more expensive. We run 2 bulls to each pasture, and it's eliminated a lot of our problems. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everybody. I think we are right on time. Yes, sir? Oh, okay.
While we're waiting on
We'll do
that, just a second, I forgot one other thing a while ago. I think I forgot it. The peer groups that we're going to do at 2 o'clock today, if you're an alumnus of the school and you're interested in those peer groups, we're going to meet in here to kind of decide when is the first one of those meetings going to be. So please show up then if you can.
All right, a great question just came in from the audience. I'm going to insert this into the one that I had. So if you had to give a general broad answer to this, some of these innovative things that you've employed on the ranch, if you had to put a general number and make a statement of, this has made us X amount more profitable, this has saved us X percentage of our overall expenses, could you put, I know that's the good old extension answer is it depends, right, which one we're talking about. But some of these types of things, what have they done for your operation from a quantified, a dollars and cents standpoint?
I can take a stab at it. I think real stewardship is not only taking care of the grass and the cows, but it's taking care of your numbers and your family too. So I can get really passionate about that. Because if we can get good at ranching by using this kind of stuff, we can start to feed our families better, have a little excess, maybe hire an employee, bring them into town, improve Main Street kind of feel. So I can get really excited about this. But we probably spent, between $8 and $10 an acre. And by picking up the extra grazing capacity, it paid for itself in at most a year and a half. And so we did that, finished a few years ago. There's always more to do, but we got the obvious infrastructure improvements done, and they are still paying for themselves. There's hiccups, it's not magic, but it's better than, I couldn't afford to, as I hope a young rancher, lose money forever and watch it decline. I could project on paper when I was going to go out of business before I started grazing better, if that makes a difference. So I don't know that you can afford not to. I don't know if I can look at my kids and say, hey, I was so stuck in doing it this way that you have no chance of coming back ranching. That's a bigger cost than what any fence or water would cost. So that's just my take.
I don't know if I could put a number on it quite yet. I'll tell you what I project. I think I can pay for all of it and fences, everything in probably 12 years. But, talking back to I work for Happy State Bank as well, and you take that expense and you took some cash but I say you can add that to your value on your real estate. You can roll that down into your financial statement. It's not a gone value. I think it helps, if you were to ever sell that property, it's going to be there. We put a lot of things on ranches, homes, a lot of things that probably are more of a hindrance, but water and fences are probably not that thing. And I know there's a lot in here that, like to do it conventionally and like to, rope and drag, and you think, well, maybe these guys don't do that. I mean, our family, we still like to do it that way. We do everything horseback. One thing, that's, I think, these cattle that have been behind the fence, some polywire, and the water system, we're throwing all our cows in one herd, and we're going to do branding outside. No pens, no nothing. Throw them up and go to work. And I think that saves time, people. And so if you think, well, these guys are maybe a little too, new-minded, you can still do some of those old traditional things along with this technology.
My only thing I would add is these three guys in particular are they probably have some of the sharpest pencils I know. So, I mean, when they're telling you that's how much dollars that is, they're not guessing. They've had it on a spreadsheet and they know. And one thing that you need to keep in mind about, so what, will it pay for itself? Well, ask yourself, so how much is your time worth? And how long does it take you to go check cattle now? How long would it take you if you've got them in one herd? How long does it take you to find a sick one now versus you can go out there and see the whole bunch in 20 minutes? And you can pull them as they're going through a gate. How much will it matter if you can get them to 20% more of the ranch than what they used to? And all those things, and you spend the money on the infrastructure and the management, that gets better over time. There's a lot of people that are doing a lot of brush work, and do not get me, Joe, I'm not a mesquite lover. But there's a lot of people that are spending money on brush work. They're not using all the grass that they've got now. And if you look at any of the research that's been done, you get a bump in, if you're lucky, you get a bump in production for a while, and then over a period of time, the brush comes back in, and that goes away. With this, you can get an immediate increase in carrying capacity because of better distribution, and then the grass gets better over time too, and that appreciates over time. And so all those things have to be considered before you say, oh, that will never work here.
So it's, Dr. Smith has a closing statement that I've asked him to make. But before he does that, I think I can smell those Wagyu steaks already. And I'm looking forward to that myself. I wanted to say this with the exception of Dr. Steffens. These three gentlemen are all three ranchers here in my county. Now, Justin made a reference to Oklahoma a while ago. He also has an Oklahoma ranch for all you Okies out there. And so do the Haleys. And so the thing that I wanted to point out, though, is all three of these gentlemen are on my ag committee. And these young ranchers, in my opinion, are our future. They're kind, they're type. And the thing that I'm so proud of them is that they're willing to share what they've been trained by their parents and grandparents, what they've learned. Adam is a Red Raider. John is a OSU Cowboy. Justin's an OSU Cowboy. No Aggies on the bunch. I'm sorry about that. But they've coupled their education, including the TCU Ranch Management School and Ranching to Profit, the Grass Grazing School. They're continuing to try to learn, but through our ag committee, they're also trying to share what they're learning. And so Danny Nusser told us agents something about 8 years ago. And so now look at my hair, guys. No disrespect to baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer. Look at the gray hair. Danny Nusser said, agents, I'm sick and tired of only baby boomers coming to our extension events. I want some young people. I have made a concerted effort to get our young ranchers involved. And I've realized what Danny meant by that as I've gone along. They are our future. And thank you guys that are my age and older for investing in them. So thank you guys for sharing today. Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Andy. We, on behalf of Bruce and I, sincerely appreciate the opportunity to panel this or host this panel. Thank you all as the audience for your questions and engaging in this process and really making Bruce and mine's jobs quite simple. But lastly but not least, I certainly want to thank all of our panelists. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your help and being willing to share some of the things, some of the risks that you all have taken on your operations and how they've worked, and maybe a few things that you had to learn along the way. And just my call to everyone in the audience would be to have that kind of mindset. Think about things in a different light. And I think that gets back to some of the things that Dr. Benavidez mentioned earlier. You heard Donald mention some of those things as well, but we're not necessarily trying to fix things that ain't broke. But there may be some better, and by better, ultimately more profitable ways of going about and doing things. So I encourage you all to visit with the panelists, visit with others amongst the group to come up with some of those solutions to maybe problems that you didn't know existed. Donald?